She had given me a list of rules on the drive up. No holding hands unless she initiated it. No pet names unless someone was watching. No answering questions about how we met. She would handle the story. If her mother asked about the ring, I was to say we hadn't chosen one yet because we wanted to do it properly. If her Aunt Rosario asked how I proposed, I was to say it was private. I had agreed to all of it. I had driven 3 hours and agreed to all of it, and I was in a hotel corridor outside a room with one bed, listening to her explain this to the front desk person on the phone with the particular controlled patience of a woman who has been managing situations her entire life and has recently encountered one she did not plan for. She hung up, looked at the bed, looked at me. "This is fine," she said. "Completely fine," I said. Neither of us moved toward the bed. The room was very quiet. "The rules still apply," she said. "Of course," I said. "Good," she said. And she set her bag on the chair and began to unpack with the efficiency of someone who has decided that competence is the appropriate response to all circumstances, including ones involving a king-sized bed and a man she called 3 weeks ago because she was out of better options. I was not offended by being the last option. I understood why I was the last option. I also understood, standing in that room with the door closed and the wedding beginning in the morning, that I had said yes for reasons that had nothing to do with doing her a favor, and that those reasons were going to be considerably harder to manage over the next 48 hours than I had estimated. My name is Callum Reed. I'm 34. I work in structural engineering, bridges mostly, which is a job that requires you to think carefully about what holds things up and what happens when the load is distributed wrong. I have since recognized this as relevant professional experience for the situation I am about to describe. Her name is Sarah Okafor, 31. She's a family lawyer who works for a firm that handles the kind of cases that require her to be precise and unreadable in equal measure. She is both of those things at all times. She is also the younger sister of a woman I dated for 11 months, which is the part that requires some explanation before any of the rest of it makes sense. Her sister, Amara, and I ended the relationship 2 years ago, cleanly and by mutual agreement, in the way that two people occasionally manage when they are both sensible and have been honest about the fact that something is missing without being able to name what it is. We don't speak much. There is no hostility. There is nothing, which is its own kind of answer. The complication is that I had met Sarah during those 11 months. Not often, she came to 2 family dinners and 1 birthday, and she was at the periphery of a life I was adjacent to for less than a year. She was not someone I knew well. She was someone I had noticed, which is different, and which I had the good sense not to examine too closely while I was with her sister, and which I had the less good sense to keep not examining after the relationship ended, when the examination would have been entirely appropriate. She called 3 weeks before the wedding. Her intended +1, a man she'd been seeing casually, had bailed with 10 days' notice. Her family's opinions about her relationship status were, from context, frequent and detailed. The wedding was her cousin's. Every relative she owned would be present. She needed someone who could be introduced as a fiancé without anyone spending 48 hours fact-checking it. She had thought about her options. She had landed on me. "You know enough about the family to be plausible," she said on the phone. "And you have reason to be there that isn't suspicious." A pause, and you were always. Another pause. You were always decent. With everyone. I said yes before she finished the sentence. I told myself it was because I was doing someone a favor. I told myself this with the full knowledge that I was a structural engineer being extremely incurious about my own load-bearing walls. She had a small silver bracelet she wore to every event I had ever seen her at. 3 events over 11 months, and then the phone call where I noticed it in my memory before I noticed I was noticing. It had a tiny clasp in the shape of a leaf. I don't know how I knew that. I had filed it away under things I had no business filing. The drive up had been easier than I'd expected. She was good company in the way that people are good company when they are intelligent and have decided to be present. She asked questions and listened to the answers and had opinions she offered without performing them. We talked about the family, about the cousin whose wedding it was, about what I needed to know. She was thorough. She had clearly thought about this with the detail of someone who prepares cases. At some point, somewhere around the 2nd hour, she had said, "Amara doesn't know you're coming." I assumed. I said, "Is that all right?" "Yes," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "She won't make it strange," she said. "It'll just be notable that it's you. And if someone asks, I'll say we met after," she said. Which is technically true. Very technically, I said. She looked out the window. "I'm aware this is a strange thing to ask of you." "You didn't ask strangely," I said. "You were very organized about it." She laughed, short and real, the kind that arrived before she expected it. She recovered quickly, but I had seen it, which I filed away with the bracelet and other things I was not examining. The hotel was small, slightly mismanaged, and had confirmed 2 rooms in the booking and provided 1. Sarah had discovered this at check-in with the expression of a woman who has litigated worse and will not be producing emotion for the benefit of a front desk clerk. She had handled it. It had not been handleable. We were now in the room. I slept on the sofa. It was not a comfortable sofa. This is not the important part. I mention it only because the discomfort gave me several uninterrupted hours to lie in the dark and take stock of the situation with more honesty than was strictly comfortable. The situation was, I had driven 3 hours because Sarah Okafor had called me, and I had said yes immediately, and I had spent the drive noticing the way she talked with her hands slightly when she was explaining something she found interesting, and the way she went still when she was thinking, and the silver bracelet with a leaf clasp that she touched once, briefly, when she was deciding how to phrase something. None of this was the behavior of a man doing a favor. All of it was the behavior of a man who had been aware of someone from the wrong side of a family threshold for 2 years and had just been handed 48 hours in close proximity and had agreed to them without a moment's hesitation. The thing about being a structural engineer is that you develop a professional habit of identifying the actual problem before you try to solve it. The actual problem was not the sofa. The actual problem was that I had been aware of Sarah Okafor for 2 years and had categorized it as off-limits, and then kept the category even after it stopped being applicable, out of a vague sense that the circumstances made the whole thing complicated. The circumstances were complicated. The feeling was not. I slept badly and woke up early and made coffee from the small machine on the dresser and had one ready on her side before she appeared, which I did without thinking about it and then thought about it a great deal after. She stopped when she saw it. Looked at me. "You made coffee," she said. "I made too much," I said. A pause, just long enough to mean something. She took the coffee. The wedding was everything a large family wedding in full attendance is. Loud and warm and structured around a series of moments that required everyone to be in the same place, with the same feelings, at the same time. Sarah moved through it with the ease of someone who knew the choreography. She introduced me with the specific fluency of a person who is prepared and is now executing. I was introduced to her parents, her Aunt Rosario, 3 cousins, and a great uncle who shook my hand and said, in a tone of deep approval, finally, Sarah had not let go of my arm since we walked in. This was, per the rules, appropriate. We were performing. I was aware it was a performance. I was also aware that her hand was on my arm, and that the awareness was disproportionate to the fact, and that this said something I was not going to examine during the reception. Amara arrived mid-morning. We saw each other across the room. There was a moment, brief, civil, the kind of moment that two people produce when they have both moved on and are demonstrating it without performing it. She glanced at Sarah, then at me. Then she did something I had not expected. She smiled, genuinely, and looked away, and went to greet someone else. That was the whole of it. That was enough. Sarah had felt me go still during it. She looked up. Okay? She said, quiet, just for me. Yes, I said, and I meant it. She nodded once. Her hand settled more firmly on my arm, which was, per the rules, for the benefit of anyone watching. I was not entirely certain it was for the benefit of anyone watching. The afternoon had the rhythm of these events: lunch, speeches, the first dance. The satellite conversations that form and dissolve while the dancing goes on. I was talking to her uncle about engineering, which he found genuinely interesting, when I saw Sarah across the room with her Aunt Rosario. Rosario was talking. Sarah was listening with the expression she used when she was being patient about something that required significant patience. Then Rosario reached out and touched the silver bracelet, said something. Sarah looked at the bracelet. Then, briefly, across the room at me. I didn't look away. She did. Back to Rosario, back to the conversation, back to the performance. But she had looked. And she had known I was looking. And she had let the moment sit for a half-second before she broke it, which was half a second longer than she needed to. I returned to the conversation about suspension bridges and thought about what it means to distribute weight correctly. The dinner was long and generous. Sarah sat next to me with the ease of two people who have been in proximity all day and have stopped performing and started just being present, which is, I have since reflected, a description of something that is not a performance. Aunt Rosario made a toast that was ostensibly about the bride and groom and substantially about love arriving late and being better for it. She looked at Sarah twice during it. Sarah looked at her wine glass. Under the table, her knee pressed briefly against mine, not deliberate, I think, just the reflex of someone who wanted a point of contact and reached for the nearest one. I did not move. She noticed I hadn't moved. She didn't move either. We sat like that through the end of the toast, which was longer than it needed to be, and which I will be forever grateful to Aunt Rosario for, without ever being able to explain why. Back at the room, late, she sat on the edge of the bed and took off her heels and set them neatly together and looked at the floor for a moment. It went well, she said. It did, I said. She stopped. You were very good. Thank you. I didn't do much, I said. You were just there, she said. That was the thing. You were just completely... She stopped again. She looked at her hands. The bracelet caught the light. Sarah, I said. I should tell you something, she said. Quiet, still looking at her hands. About why I called you. Specifically, I waited. I told you it was because you were plausible, she said, and because you were decent. Both of those things are true. She turned the bracelet once around her wrist, the small leaf clasp moving under her thumb. But I have plausible, decent friends. I have people I could have asked who wouldn't have come with. She paused, choosing the word carefully in the way she chose all words. With history. With history, I said. I called you, she said, because I wanted it to be you. and I built a reasonable explanation around that because the real one seemed like too much to say on a phone call to someone I've spoken to 6 times in 2 years. The room was very quiet. 6 times, I said. I counted, she said. She looked up. She had the expression of someone who has said the thing they meant to say and is now waiting to find out what it costs. Not afraid, exactly. Prepared. The way she was prepared for everything, except she was also pink at the edges in a way that preparation hadn't covered. That's a strange thing to admit, I'm aware. I crossed the room. I sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that the distance was no longer ambiguous. She turned to look at me. I said yes immediately, I said. She waited. You didn't finish the sentence, I said. You were still explaining, and I said yes. I told myself I was doing a favor. I spent the drive up noticing how you talk with your hands when something interests you and telling myself I was doing a favor. I paused. I am not a very convincing liar when I'm being honest with myself. She looked at me. The performance was entirely gone, the family lawyer fluency, the managed composure, all of it. Just her, on the edge of a bed in a hotel room, looking at me with something that had been true for a while and was now just above the surface. The circumstances are complicated, she said. The circumstances are fine, I said. We're both clear of them. They're just circumstances. Your ex-girlfriend is downstairs, she said. My ex-girlfriend smiled at us across a room, I said, and went to talk to someone else. She's fine. We're fine. The circumstances are fine. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You could tell me, she said slowly, to forget I said it. That this is a strange situation and we're tired, and it doesn't need to be more than what it is. I could, I said. That would be the sensible thing, she said. Structurally, I said, the sensible thing and the right thing aren't always the same. You build for what the load actually is, not for what you'd prefer it to be. She looked at me. Did you just use a bridge metaphor, she said. I'm a structural engineer, I said. It's unavoidable. She laughed, the real one, the unmanaged one. The one I had heard once in the car and had been thinking about since. Then she went quiet, and she looked at the bracelet, and she looked at me, and she said, I've had your number in my phone for 2 years, under your actual name. I didn't move it to a different category, I just left it there. What category did it stay in? I said. She held my gaze. The one I looked at, she said, when I wasn't looking for anything. I reached out and covered her hand. She turned her palm up. The bracelet shifted on her wrist, the leaf clasp catching the light one more time. The rules, she said softly. No one is watching, I said. No, she said. No one is watching. She leaned forward, and I met her, and the kiss was quiet and careful and chosen. The way she did everything that actually mattered. From the corridor outside, the sound of other wedding guests returning to their rooms drifted under the door. Laughter, someone saying good night in the particular way of people who have had a good day and know it. She pulled back just slightly. Her forehead rested against mine. One bed, she said. Don't overthink it, I said. She laughed, soft and close. That was mine, she said. I know, I said. I liked it. 4 months later, when her mother asked, very directly in the way of a woman who had been patient long enough, whether there was something she should know, Sarah said yes, and her mother said she had thought so since the wedding, and Sarah said we weren't together at the wedding, and her mother said, I know. But he made you coffee in the morning. Rosario saw. Sarah came home and told me this with the expression of a woman who has been out-lawyered by her own mother and has decided to find it funny. I found it extremely funny. She told me to stop. I didn't stop for quite some time. In July, she moved the bracelet to a drawer. I asked why. She said she'd replaced it. She showed me the same bracelet, same leaf clasp, but the chain was new. She'd had it repaired properly, the old one having been worn thin from 2 years of daily use. She wore it every day. She wore it to a dinner with her family the following month, where Amara was also present. And Amara said hello to me with the warmth of someone who has decided that the people they care about being happy is more important than anything else, which is the best thing you can say about a person, and which I have thought about since. A year after that, when people asked how we got together, we both said the same thing: a wedding. Her cousins, and then one of them would say it started with a fake engagement, and the other would say it started before that, and they would disagree pleasantly about this for a moment, the way they disagreed about everything. With fluency, and without rancor, and landing somewhere truer than either starting position. The rules have long since been retired. There are no rules. There is just this, which is, I have concluded, the load the whole structure was built to carry. It had always been distributed correctly. I just needed to stop pretending I didn't know what held it up.